Last time, on Empress Matilda, the king's daughter was summoned from the ashes of the White Ship disaster. Once the Holy Roman Empress, she was named heir to England, only to see her birthright snatched by her treacherous cousin, Stephen of Blois. Forced into a humiliating marriage with young Geoffrey of Anjou, she turned her fury on her own father, Henry I, pillaging Normandy in a storm of vengeance. But when Henry died, Stephen moved faster, bribing his way to the throne while Matilda, not yet ready to make her move, schemed from across the Channel. Now, in 1139, war explodes. Matilda's ships carve through the fog, her army a blade at England's throat. Barons betray oaths, villages burn, plundering armies roam the countryside, and the chroniclers write, "Christ and his saints sleep." But the Lioness does not, and tonight, the reckoning begins. The Lioness War began in Episode 1. Make sure not to miss a moment. Subscribe now to witness history's legends unfold. Welcome back to Storyteller's Hearth Fireside Tales, Empress Matilda Series, Episode 2, A Queen's Ploy. The first snowflakes of winter were falling on the towers of Arundel Castle as Empress Matilda stepped onto English soil for the first time in years, with Robert of Gloucester and 140 elite Norman and Flemish knights. The cold Channel wind bit at her face, but her gaze never wavered. "This time," she murmured, "I do not come as a daughter. I come as a conqueror." Behind her, the chainmail-clad knights funded by her half-brother Robert shifted restlessly. They all suspected the truth. England would not surrender easily. Stephen swiftly marched south in response, laying siege to Arundel Castle, where Matilda had taken refuge with Adeliza, the widowed queen of Henry I. Surprisingly, despite having them trapped, Stephen accepted a truce proposal brokered by his brother, Bishop Henry of Blois. The besieged party's high status, and perhaps Stephen's assessment that Matilda's small retinue posed no immediate threat to his rule, may have influenced this uncharacteristic leniency. Under the terms of the agreement, Matilda and her knights were allowed to depart unharmed to the safety of the West Country. There, she rejoined her half-brother Robert of Gloucester, who had bypassed Arundel altogether, instead securing key strongholds like Wallingford and Bristol to bolster their resistance. King Stephen lounged in his hall, goblet in hand, laughter spilling like cheap wine. Matilda's landing had been the subject of jokes among his courtiers. "You should have seen the look on her face when she surrendered," he scoffed. "What does she think she can do against the might of all England, with only 100 swords? Let her scurry through the hedgerows like a fox." With this, he made the mistake of agreeing to give her small invasion force free passage to Bristol. To provoke her ego even further, Stephen had his mounted troops escort her invasion party as far as the West Country to protect them from highway robbers. His nobles chuckled, yet their eyes darted to the doors. A few remembered their broken oaths. After establishing her court in Gloucester, Matilda's cause began to gain momentum. Bolstered by Welsh allies, she dominated the West Country, Wiltshire, and parts of Wales, where she amassed a formidable force by 1141, one strong enough to challenge Stephen directly. The king's wavering leadership further tipped the scales, as his indecisiveness alienated key barons, driving them to defect to Matilda's faction. Stephen's reaction only deepened the crisis. In a desperate bid to regain military leverage, he recruited Flemish mercenaries under William of Ypres. Yet these moves backfired, stoking resentment among his English subjects and further eroding his support. Stephen launched his counterattack by striking at Wallingford Castle, a strategic stronghold commanding the Thames corridor. Fiercely defended by Brian Fitzcount, the castle proved too formidable for Stephen's forces to take. Meanwhile, in early 1140, Bishop Nigel of Ely defected to Matilda's cause, bolstering her support in the critical eastern regions. Faced with this dual threat, Stephen abandoned his western campaign and rushed east to stabilize his crumbling authority and secure London, his political heartland. Matilda's strategy was to move swiftly. Castles in the west fell and key strongholds flipped like chess pieces. Her uncle, King David I of Scotland, had marched south, swallowing northern England as far south as Durham. The bards sang, "The rightful heir has returned." But Stephen would not underestimate her again. He was determined he would strike back, and hard. Then, in late December 1140, the Earl of Chester, festering from broken promises made by Stephen, changed sides and seized Lincoln Castle by pretending to come on a friendly visit. Upon hearing the news, Stephen flew into a rage. Ignoring his commander's warnings, he rushed to besiege Lincoln without first mustering sufficient troops. But once again, he underestimated Matilda, never imagining she would dare risk a winter march to relieve the Earl. As Matilda's forces advanced toward Lincoln, under Robert of Gloucester's command, Stephen's advisers urged retreat, advice his pride and battle-lust rejected. True to his reckless nature, the king ordered a headlong cavalry charge, only to be abandoned mid-charge by his own barons. They recognized what Stephen refused to see. He had galloped straight into Matilda's trap. The royal army found itself encircled, with escape routes cut off. When his bodyguard fell, Stephen fought on alone, swinging his battle-axe wildly until exhaustion and numbers overwhelmed him. "Yield!" Robert demanded. Stephen's bloodied face twisted in defiance. "To a woman!" The argument ended with a spear tap on his helmet. Matilda personally received Stephen at her court in Gloucester, a calculated display of authority over her rival. After this symbolic encounter, she ordered him transferred to Bristol Castle, a fortress long reserved for imprisoning nobles of high rank. Matilda entered London in a pompous storm of silk and steel, declaring herself Lady of the English. She struck coins to celebrate her upcoming coronation, and the people dutifully lined the streets, shouting their half-hearted cheers as she passed. Stephen was safely in prison, and everything looked set for her crowning. After Stephen, who was in prison, agreed to release his subjects from their vow of fealty, the Church on April 7, 1141, declared that Matilda should be monarch in place of Stephen. The coronation was set to take place at the end of June. Then she blundered. In her arrogance, she refused to grant the people their customary tax concessions and other favors that are given to celebrate a coronation. On learning there would be no free caps and T-shirts, the crowd's agitation turned into hostility as they complained, "She plans to rule like a tyrant." With Stephen gone, his wife, Queen Matilda of Boulogne, outplayed the Lioness. While the Empress was busy planning her coronation, the Queen had quietly bought London's loyalty by bribing them with food, money, and promises. Then she persuaded some of Stephen's allies to besiege the city gates. By June 24th, shortly before the coronation, the London mob had become so disturbed, Matilda's men were having difficulty controlling them. Seeing a small opportunity for her escape, Matilda and her retinue made a run for it early in the morning, escaping the city with only her shattered dreams of a crown. Her ignoble flight to Oxford, and later to her stronghold at Gloucester, became a turning point in her campaign for the crown. Thank you for joining us for Episode 2, A Queen's Ploy, the second episode in our 5-part saga of Empress Maud's remarkable life. But the excitement has only begun. Next time in Episode 3, Death and Resurrection, witness the lioness escape from captivity as history and legends collide. This has been a Storyteller's Hearth Fireside Tales production. If you enjoyed this journey into history, be sure to subscribe, like, and share, so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may the fires of legend keep burning.